Good evening, everybody. Listen, we're so excited. Come on in the room. Come on. I always wanted to say that, Dr. Wilson. Come on in the room. Come on in the room. Listen, we
Love
are
it.
excited because we are here for another month where we're coming together with Dr. Mia Wilson, who has been so eloquently, if you've been following us at all during the pandemic, giving us a dose of what I like to call Christ and the couch. You can't have one without the other. And so I'm so excited because this month, Dr. Wilson is coming to us and she's going to be talking to us about fear. And Dr. Wilson, I think it's so amazing, such timeliness with everything that's going on in the world, with the season that we're in, how to manage and how to deal with fear. And so, listen, do us a favor. I'm getting ready to stop talking so we can all sit here and glean knowledge tonight. But right before Dr. Wilson comes, do us a favor. Go ahead and go ahead and share, tag somebody. Dr. Wilson, I'm going to stop talking so I can get my pen and take notes.
All right. Thank you, Ray. Good evening, everyone. I'm so excited to be back with you guys again, live for this month. Like Ray was talking about, we're going was indicating we're going to talk about fear. It is the yeah, with the month of October, we do definitely do a lot of fearful things. I know there's a lot of horror films out there. I'm not the one to watch horror films, but I am Dr. Mia Wilson. For those who don't know me, I'm a licensed mental health counselor here in the state of Florida, licensed professional counselor in the state of Georgia, certified addiction professional, and a certified traumatologist. That's a mouthful. And I'm also nationally board certified. So I'm real excited. I'm going to go ahead and get started um, about the subject of fear. And let me see if I can share my screen. Okay. And I'm going to bring up my PowerPoint. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see that. And so this is about what's keeping you on edge. And so we all experience fear in one shape, form, or fashion. It's just kind of innate in us. A lot of times, especially during this pandemic, we had a lot of unknowns, and a lot of us fear the unknown when we don't know especially if we're planners, we don't know what's coming. Or how are we going to deal with this pandemic? When's the end of the pandemic? What's my life going to look like? It can keep us on edge. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about fear so you can guys, and also at the end of the presentation, I'm going to give you guys some what we call good goods. I'm going to give you some goodies that you can take with you that you can be able to help you manage your fear. Okay. So one of the definitions of fear is a natural, powerful, and primitive human emotion. So this was a emotion that um it's not a bad thing, and it's not a good thing when we have too much fear. Too much of anything is not good. But it involved as a universal biochemical response as well as a high individual emotional response. So, in other words, way back in the day, the cavemen, when they used it to be able to sense danger and when they needed to flee. And so that fear kicked in, what we call fight and flight. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So they knew how to survive in different situations. And of course, throughout the years, we're learning how fear is we know we're not running from dinosaurs or saber-toothed tigers, but it had also evolved where we're dealing with things today, and so it alerts us to the presence of danger or threat or harm, whether that danger is physical or psychological. If people didn't feel fear, they wouldn't be able to protect themselves from legitimate threats. So think about if you were walking. Sometime when I walk in my neighborhood, we have a neighbor that has an extremely large dog that I'm not. I'm okay with dogs, but I'm not okay with big dogs that bark and show teeth. And so that's my innate emotions to say, hey, you know what? That might be some danger. And so it helps me protect myself from threats. So why do we fear feel fear? Huh. At least 60% of adults admit of having at least one unreasonable fear, although research today is not clear on why these fears manifest. So I'm sure you can look around and say, well, there might be something that I fear, although I'm not sure why. Like, I'm not from Florida, but when I got here, they have these lizards. And even though I never known anybody got attacked by a lizard, and they tend to run away from me. But I fear them. But that's not reasonable. There's nothing to say, well, the lizards are dangerous. But I'm probably they're running one way and I'm running the other. Some people fear certain things because of previous traumatic experience that happened to them. So this could be anywhere from a car accident. Every time now when you get in a car, you're feeling anxious because of attaching the car accident to every time I get in a car, I'm almost thinking, oh my gosh, the last time I was in a car, it was very traumatic. So there's certain things that, um, which is kind of, those experiences kind of carry on. Some of the symptoms of fear, each person may experience fear differently, but some of the common signs and symptoms can include chest pain. So a lot of times when people have some of this intense fear, they start feeling it in their chest. And actually, some people will um, mistake the chest pains for heart attacks. And so there's a lot of people that end up in the ER because of chest pains and thinking they're having a heart attack when actually they're having a panic attack. Some people get cold, they feel chill, or have a dry mouth, or they feel nauseous. Think about people that have to talk in front of a great big crowd. When we used to do that, sometimes they feel a little nauseous before they go on the stage. Their heartbeat starts increasing. They get a shortness of breath, so sometimes they start hyperventilating. They may start sweating. Some people get chills, some people get really hot and start sweating, or the palms of their hands get sweaty, or they start trembling. Notice that they start shaking their legs, or their hands are trembling, things of that nature. Some of the other physical symptoms of fear is that they get into this fight or flight or freeze response. So, if we're going to think fearful thoughts, our body is going to respond to it. So during a frightful or stressful situations, we our body is getting geared up to say, okay, we either gonna fight whatever that danger is, or we're gonna run from wherever that danger is, or we're gonna end up freezing. So basically, what the body is doing is that when we start saying, "Oh, that's a danger," remember we talked about, I was talking about the dog. I'm thinking this dog is not friendly at all. Because I'm thinking that, my body is now responding and saying, okay, we're going to get ready for this. We're going to get ready to deal with this. And so what happens is my heart starts beating faster. Our heart starts beating faster. And basically what it's doing is pumping blood into your lungs. And it's getting so that it can get oxygen rich blood into your system. And so, and most of those that oxygen rich blood is going into the arms and the legs. So sometimes when we're fearful, like, oh, my boss is calling me, and I'm thinking, wow, that can't be good. And now all of a sudden I'm start feeling fearful. Um, our arms and our legs start getting tight, and the muscles. And we're like, gosh, and so the body is ready to, like, what we gonna do? We gonna fight the boss, or we gonna run from the boss, or sometimes we would just freeze. We get so overwhelmed. I don't know what else to do. And so I feel stuck in my response. And so it's the oxygen rich, so is that I am ready to whatever I need to do, that the body is ready to go on to either I'm going to fight it or I'm going to run. And so, and then memory tends to, we kind of get into this fog because our memory is saying, well, we don't need, we're not trying to learn anything new. We're going in some old, back in the day instinct, survival instinct. And so it shuts down the memory. So it's hard to think clear because it's like, or somebody called me, it's really, I can't remember who just called me. And so we get very forgetful. So, if you're under a lot of stress, sometimes your memory is not as good. You can't remember, like, oh my god, where did I just put my keys? Things of that nature. And so we're all ready, and then the stomach, sometimes we get that queasy feeling or butterflies in our stomach because not a lot of blood is going into that area, because they're saying, well, if we're going to be trying to survive this thing, or we're going to fight, or we're going to run, we ain't going to stop and eat a sandwich, right? And so that's how the body responds. How do and then children also learn fear. So what they do is that research show that babies do not appear to show any sign of fear until they're about 8 to 12 months of age, and usually in response to new people or new events. And they're like, I don't know what this is, or I don't know who this is, but they're less likely to show a fear of stranger when sitting on a parent's lap, because the parents, they have a sense of safety with the parents, or with the grandparents. And while some fear may be innate in humans, many of the fears are learned. So again, innately, if I see a dangerous dog, I'm going to flee. I might flee the other way, or some people might try to fight the dog. I've seen some neighbors do that. But that's our innate in us. But some of the fears are learned. So perhaps most commonly by seeing a parent react fearfully to like an animal or a situation, or they're frequently warning a child about its danger. So I had a client, for example, his mother was fearful of thunderstorms. So he can remember as a child, his mother was always like running from thunderstorms. Oh my God, it's a thunderstorm. Oh, there's the storm clouds, and she would be frightful. So as growing up, he learned to be fearful of thunderstorms, to the point where it became um, harm. Well, it just caused disruption in his own life, because he had a business. And so, you're in Florida, we have thunderstorms. So, every time a thunderstorm would come, he couldn't run his store. So let's look at some types of fear. We have what's called rational fear. So the rational fear occurs when there is a real intimate threat. In other words, that dog is real. It's not imagination. I see some teeth. I hear some growling. That's a rational fear. Or if I'm driving in my car and somebody, like, I'm looking in my rearview mirror and somebody is actually speeding up behind me and don't look like they're about to put on brakes. That's a rational fear. It's real, and it feels like it's an intimate threat. Primal fear is defined as the innate fear that is programmed into our brains. And so that's the one I was saying, that if I see something happening, or that dog, that menacing dog, um, it's going to kick in that I am going to maybe flee or fight, or I'm going to end up freezing, because that's my survival technique. And so it's my innate fear that's programmed. Or I'm walking past a dark alley, and there I see somebody in there. My innate fear is that, don't go down there. That might not be a safe situation. Irrational fear, this is the one that does not make any logical sense, and it can vary greatly from person to person. So these are fears that we don't see. I call it our own little fake news. And it's more commonly um, starts off as what if. Well, what if they don't like me? What if they don't accept me? what if it doesn't go the way I hope it to go? What if it's not successful? It usually starts off of that. And then what follows that what if is the worst case scenario. And when we write it out and look at it, it's like, this doesn't make any sense because none of this has occurred. What if I get in a car and I get in a car accident? But that hasn't even happened. And so it's always starts off at what if, and then the worst case scenario. And very seldom do we say, well, what if in the best case scenario? What if I get in a car and I have a safe drive home? We don't tend to think that way. We tend to think of the worst case scenario. And then it brings up, because I'm thinking about it, it brings up all the emotions of fear and anxiety and stress. And then my body is going to respond to it. And so now I'm panicking because I'm thinking about, all that fake news in my own head that hasn't even happened. And so that's the irrational fear. Now, of course, too much of we tend to have those normally, but when we have it too much of anything is not good. And then it's in that get into that loop, and now we start having anxiety problems. So, I want to talk about some specific fears. So, we have what's called situational specific fears. So, this is a temporary fear or nervousness responding to a stressful situation, like giving a presentation at work. It's also a very fleeting fear. So, sometimes it happens when you're startled. Like if you're cutting your grass and a snake crosses your path while you're gardening, it's like, oh, and then once the situation is gone, or even after I finish doing the presentation, then it goes away. And so these are, what we call those real fears. It's real, we can see it's rational. Okay. And then we have specific phobias. So many people experience occasional bout of fear or nerves when we say, oh, my nerves are bad. Oh, my goodness. And that could be before a flight, a first date. I don't know how they're going to accept me. Or it could be a big game that you're in if you play sports. But sometimes when somebody's fear is persistent and specific to a certain threat, it can impair his or her everyday life. Like I was talking about, my former client that had a fear of thunderstorms. It can start impairing his life. And so that is when a person is known to have a specific phobia. And so this fear experience is almost disproportionate to the true danger of the object or the event poses. So people with specific phobias generally know that there's no real reason to be afraid and that their behavior is not logical. However, they cannot avoid their reaction. So, breaking it down, phobias can fall into 5 broad categories. So we can have a fear of animals, such as a fear of dogs, lizards. I'm talking about all my fears, right? um, if there's a bear, we have these sense of fears of just a fear of animals. It also can be a fear of natural environments, such a fear of heights, which is pretty common, or of storms. Phobia that can include fear of fire, which is pyrophobia, and a fear of the dark, like I forgot how you pronounce that, nitophobia. And so those are pretty common. Sometimes children have fear of the dark. Um, and so those are, it could be natural environments. Some people, they have a fear of going outside, you know, um, for whatever reason. And then you have fear related to blood, and so hemophobia, or injuries, or anything that is related to blood, in injection. They have a fear of needles, or any medical procedures, including dentistry. Oh my God, they you'll have to knock them out to go to a dentist, put them in a dentist chair. They have that fear. And then you have your situational fears, such as a fear of flying, which is pretty common fear as well. A fear of public speaking, glossophobia, or a fear of riding in elevators, or any closed spaces or small spaces, claustrophobia, which is pretty common fear. Um, I know I have a friend that she has a fear of going over bridges. And so, of course, when she came to visit Jacksonville, she was like, "You guys got a lot of bridges. I don't know if I could live here." But there are people that do have a fear of going over bridges. And then you have other fears, such as a fear of vomiting or choking. So they have a hard time eating, or they get really anxious when it's mealtime because they feel that they're going to choke. Okay. So those are the broad categories, the five broad categories that phobia falls into. So phobias can manifest at any time, but it tends to emerge in childhood or adolescence. So if you had, in other words, if you had a experience as in your childhood where you almost drowned in a pool, or you had an incident where you were swimming and something traumatic happened while you were swimming, or somebody held you under the water or something like that, you may tend to get a phobia of going into a pool or go to the beach. Like, you're just not going to get into that water. And some of these symptoms can be often lifelong without any treatment for it. Because sometimes it does not interrupt our lives, and so we just tend to live with it. In some cases, exposure to the feared object or situation can cause full or limited panic attacks. So, a panic attack is where all of a sudden you start feeling hot, your heart just starts beating fast. You Your heart starts beating fast. You can't catch your breath. Um, you're having these racing thoughts. You can't relax. Some people call it hyperventilating. um and some people feel like they feel like they're choking, or somebody is sitting on their chest, and so they really have a hard time being able to even think clearly. And so that's what panic attacks, and sometimes they can um gradually come up, and some people, it just come out of the blue. As many as 9% of Americans annually experience a specific phobia, and women are twice as likely as men to have a phobia. So it's not uncommon to have multiple phobias. So, in other words, you can have phobias to maybe small places, being going on a flight. So it's not uncommon to have multiple phobias. Social anxiety disorder refers to a condition where someone feels anxious or fearful of some or all social interactions. So, in other words, these are people that when they go out to social interactions, they have a really difficult time being able to socialize. They feel like they have a fear of being judged, or they avoid specific situations where, like eating in front of others. Some have a hard time even had ordering food, and so about up to 1 in 20 people have a social phobia. And so a lot of times, especially I notice a lot of my millenniums, because we're using that nice texting, so they feel more comfortable texting instead of talking one on one with a person in front of a person. And so they really have a hard time being able to interact with people. Or sometimes, like, oh my gosh, I got to go to this job, and I'm having a hard time. I don't want to sit in front of um, front of this meeting or anything like that. Panic disorder, what we just describing, is refers to a condition where an individual experiences sudden, overwhelming fear or anxiety that may last several minutes. So the panic attack is one symptom, but the causes of the panic disorder is not always well understood. And so, again, it can last for a couple of minutes. And some people, it can last for several hours. Um, and some, again, some people end up going into an ER because they just like, oh my God, I have this pressure on my chest. They feel like they're having a heart attack. So sometimes our everyday fears can hold us back. What happens when it does? And so and I have a lot of clients that come and they say, man, I can't, it's like a block, I can't get around, I can't do this, because of these fears, they hold us back. And so some of these feelings commonly described as fears are not strictly phobias, but they're mental obstacles that limit people's action and decision, often preventing them from making progress, such, like that fear of failure. I can't make any move because I feel like I'm going to fail at it. I'm so busy fearing that I'm a fail that I don't do anything. And then you have the fear of success. So some people, they will sit in the same seat, the same situation, for years and years and years, because if I move up in my company, I don't know if I'm going to be successful at it. The other thing is the fear of rejection. So the fear of rejection is that sometimes we will sit in not healthy relationships because I don't, I don't want to be rejected. And a lot of times that may come from our childhood when we have a missing parent in our life. And then we don't know why that parent did not want, did not want me in their life. And so that carries on from one relationship to another relationship. And I have this feeling, so when I start a relationship, I'm already at the end of the relationship because I feel like, oh my gosh, anytime now they're going to reject me. I'm so anxious about being rejected that I can't even enjoy the relationship. So, even though I may be in the relationship, I'm already looking at how it's going to end because I'm fear of rejected. And that could be a fear of rejection from friends, relationships, teachers, um, anybody in my life. And then we end up staying in very toxic relationships because of it. The fear of missing out, and that came about with a lot of this technology, and that keeps us so tag onto these social media because every 10 minutes, anytime, we have those alarms that goes off to say, hey, somebody just posted in your Facebook, there's a new TikTok, there's a something on Instagram. We want to see what's going on, and we can stay on those devices and social media for hours because I want to see what's going on with who's going with who, and who's not doing what, and who's, and so it's a whole format. And sometimes people almost get addicted to it that we feel that we're missing out. And then the fear of commitment. I'm so fearful of getting into a committed relationship because I don't know what may happen down the line. Am I going to want to stay in this relationship? Am I going to be missing out on somebody better? And so these are some of the common fears. Again, they're not phobias, but they're mental obstacles. So, sometimes we can sit back and say, is there any fear that's blocking me in doing what I want to do or blocking me from my goals? And these feelings sometimes come from insecurity, or I'm feeling unworthy, or having, or I'm just cannot make decisions in my life. I'm very indecisive. And that can often be addressed in therapy. So I want to leave you guys with tips to work through your fear and to live your life. So I told you I was going to give you some goodies before we leave. So, number one, you want to allow yourself to sit with your fears. Now, I know that sounds a little like, what? You want to sit in your fear, but for 2 to 3 minutes at a time, to breathe with it and say, it's okay. It feels lousy, but emotions are like the oceans. They wave, ebb, and flow. They are not permanent, they're only temporary. And then you want to have something nurturing planned immediately after your 2 to 3 minutes. So it's like, I'm going to sit and I'm going to allow myself to feel my fears. And it's like a sailboat. I'm just going to let it come and go and move on. And then afterwards, you want to have a 2 to 3 minute sitting period that's completed. You want to call a good friend that's waiting to hear from you, or immerse yourself in an activity that you know is enjoyable and engrossing. Put on some great music, um, you know, go out with, your funny friends, get, connected with your tribe. In other words, go for a walk, go to your favorite place, and and just enjoy yourself. Okay. Write down the things that you're grateful for. So look at the list when you feel that you're in a bad place and you want to be able to add that to your list. You want to sit down and at least think about 2 or 3 things that you're grateful for that, just for that day. And that actually changes the chemical makeup in the brain. Remind yourself that your anxiety is a storehouse of wisdom. So you want to write a letter. Dear anxiety, I am no longer intimidated by you. What can you teach me? Okay. Another one is to exercise. So exercise can refocus you. Your mind can only focus on one thing at a time. You think we're not great multitaskers, but we can focus on one thing at a time. Whether you go on a short walk, you head to a boxing gym, or you go for an all-out session, or you go for a 15-minute yoga video at home. Exercise is good for you, and it will ground you and help you feel more capable. Use humor to deflate your worst fears. So, for example, you think of the worst case scenario that might happen if you accept an invitation to deliver a speech to a crowd of 500 people. I might pee in my pants at the podium. That is some the ridiculous worst case scenario. Or I'll be arrested for giving the worst speech in history. Or my first boyfriend or girlfriend will be in the audience and heckle me. And so these are some of the things when you look at the ridiculous worst case scenario, like what is the worst thing that can happen in my life if I give a speech to a crowd of 500 people? When you kind of measure it up to the worst thing that can happen in your life, it's like, okay, it may not be as bad as I'm thinking it to be. You want to appreciate your courage. So for example, Doreen will just tell herself during difficult times, every time I don't allow fear to keep me from doing something that scares me, I am making myself stronger and less likely to let that next fear attack stop me. So these are things we want to be able to tell ourselves when I'm facing my fear, and actually, you know what, let me just do it and see what happens. We want to step when we're stepping outside our comfort zone. We also want to be able to pat ourselves on the back and say, wow, I really appreciate your courage, my courage. We want to be able to love ourselves through it. And perhaps the most important coping tools is to be kind to yourself. What advice would you give a best friend about those negative inner voices that whisper, don't be afraid, don't try anything new? You know, do as you would advise others and don't listen to the negativity. Sometimes you got to be your own best friend. And another little tool that you can use is the 333 rule. Now, this is a way when you're feeling anxious, this is a way to be able to ground yourself. And so, again, we can't focus on a lot of multiple things, but the brain will tend to focus on one thing at a time. So, one of the things you can do is you can look around and you can name 3 things you see. And then you want to name 3 things that you sounds that you hear. And finally, you want to move 3 parts of your body. It could be your ankles, your toes, your fingers, your arms, your eyebrows, just any 3 parts of your body you want to be able to move. And so this is what we call grounding. you're able to be able to relax. And this is a great technique to use when you're feeling anxious. And that is all I have for this evening.
Wow, what an amazing, thank you so much, Dr. Wilson. What an amazing presentation. St. Paul family and friends watching, listen, do me a favor. Would you put some hearts and some emojis right there in the comments? What a great opportunity. So apropos, Dr. Wilson, as you said, in Halloween, and we're in this season where people are thriving on fear. And as you were talking, I was thinking, man, we're in this season that's promoting fear in this totally fearful time. What kind of anxiety levels of some people is it setting off? I'll be honest with you. As you were talking, I was doing the 333. I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. Oh my goodness. Uh,
It's a great little tool. You can use your own, your own senses, your eyes, your hearing, and then being able just to move three things that on your body, and that will help you just kind of release some of that fear. Yeah.
I'll be honest. I'm taking that tool with me to work because there are some people at my job here in Virginia that run my anxiety all the way up. And now I have a coping mechanism other than just ignoring them because that's not working. Listen, everyone, thank you so much for taking and making the investment of your time. I want to challenge you to not just hear now what you've heard from Dr. Wilson, but to do us a favor. Go back, watch it again, share the information. This is some great information. I'm so grateful to Bishop Guns and to Dr. Wilson, who both come to us every month with this platform to help make sure not only is our spiritual health intact, but that our mental health is intact. Both are equally as important. Dr. Wilson, for those, and I know you've been doing this now with us for, man, a year.
Yeah.
A
Yes.
year. For
Yeah.
those, if there's someone, though, who is new, and maybe they're new to the platform and they live in the Jacksonville area, is there an email address or a way that they can contact you? If there's someone who, after listening to tonight, says, hey, I need to go a little further with information. Is there a way they can contact you?
Absolutely. My email address is pink and green, like the colors, doc at gmail.com. And my number is 904-891-6614.
Listen, you heard it from Dr. Wilson. It's been an amazing night. Dr. Wilson, thank you as always for taking your
Thank
time with
you.
us. St. Paul, show your love and your appreciation to Dr. Wilson. Listen, on behalf of Bishop John Guns and Pastor Sanjanique Guns, and on behalf of Pastor Cotton, who's given me the opportunity tonight to kind of stand in and substitute for him. Listen, this has been Let's Talk. Join us next month. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye.